Shalom Aleichem and welcome back everyone as we are preparing for Shabbat. Parshat Vayeishev. Vayeishev Yaakov. Yaakov now is sitting in Eretz Canaan. And we all know the story that happens. The biggest story in this week's Parsha is that Yosef's brothers sell him into slavery. Now, the brothers have to come home without Yosef, and they have to tell their father what happened. So what do? What do we see in the Parsha? They take Yosef's ketonet pasim, they take his tunic, his multicolored cloak, and they dip it into goat's blood. And they bring it to Yaakov, and they tell Yaakov, is this your son's coat or not? Yaakov sees it, and he says, it's my son's coat. A wild animal ate him. The Rebbe of Radzimin, he asks, why couldn't the brothers just bring the cloak home? Why did they have to go and dip it into blood? They could have came and they said, Father, look what we found. Look what we found. Yosef, this looks like Yosef. Yosef's not here. It must be something happened to him. Oh, so they say very good. Chazal tell us that even when a sharp sword is on someone's neck, right, he has to have bitachon that Hashem will help. Yaakov Avinu was extremely high level of bitachon. Yaakov Avinu, if he thought Yosef was lost, but didn't have any proof, like you said, that he was actually killed, he would have had complete bitachon in Hashem that Yosef is okay. And he would daven for Yosef. And we know that if a person has complete bitachon in Hashem, and he prays to Hashem, Hashem answers him. Yaakov Avinu, if they would have just come home with the tunic without it being dipped into blood, he would have thought Yosef was alive. Okay, he's lost. Maybe something happened. But with enough bitachon and enough prayer, he would have been able to cause Yosef HaTzadik to come back. So the brothers didn't want Yosef HaTzadik to come back. So they put the tunic into blood to tell Yaakov, you can't do anything about it. It's already done. He's already killed. There is no bitachon for something. You can't rely on the nest and bring him back from the dead. He's dead already. There's no point to pray. There's no point to believe. We see a great insight over here, that with enough bitachon and enough prayer, Hashem listens to a person, and Hashem brings out what needs to be done. So now for a moment, let's move to the Sefer HaYashar. The Sefer HaYashar teaches, based on a midrash, that when Yosef was being taken down to Mitzrayim, the Arab caravan stopped by, they rode past his mother's kever, to Rachel Imenu, Mama Rachel's kever. And the Midrash says Yosef HaTzadik jumps out, and he goes onto the kever of his mother, and he screams, and he davens, Mama, Mama, look what's happening to your son. Please go to Hashem. Tell him, let me return to my father. Please help me. And who is Yosef? Yosef is an orphan. Someone who Hashem listens to more, right? It says in the Torah, Hashem listens to orphans. Yosef, an innocent man, who's being sent to all this trouble. And he davens and he davens and his davens, and nothing positive, no answer. He had to be taken down to Mitzrayim. You were just telling me, right? The Rebbe of Radzimin said when a person davens and believes bitachon, everything works out for him. Yosef HaTzadik is davening away, and no answer. But not only that, this question becomes even more difficult. Why? In our Tanakh, in our history, we have a king by the name Menashe. Menashe HaMelech was one of the worst kings we ever had in the beginning of his kingship. He was a son of Hiskiyahu HaMelech. Hiskiyahu didn't want to have him, right? The whole story. And he worship every avodah zarah. He killed all the rabbis. He killed his own grandfather. He was a terrible man. And the Nevi'im came and told him, you have to do tshuva, or the Assyrians are going to come, and they're going to capture you, and they're going to cause this problem, that problem. He didn't listen. Eventually, like the Nevi'im said, the Assyrians came, and they captured him, and they put him in a large copper pot, and they lit a flame underneath. They wanted to burn Menashe alive. Cook him. So Menashe HaMelech started to daven. He started to scream and daven to all avodah zarah. One avodah zarah, a second avodah zarah. He was davening to all different avodah zarahs. And no answer. No answer. Finally, he says, you know what, my father, Hiskiyahu HaMelech, taught me about Hashem. And he said to me, anytime you return to Hashem, Hashem will accept it. So he makes tshuva, and he starts davening to Hashem, and he says, Hashem, if you answer me, I know you're true. If you don't, then I know you like the avodah zarah. And what are we told? Our Chachamim tell us that all the Malachim didn't want his tshuva to come up. They tried to block it. They didn't let the tefillah come up. So what did Hashem do? Hashem dug a tunnel for his tefillah to come underneath and come up to Hashem's throne. A tunnel underneath Hashem's throne. And Menashe Melech was saved. So here we have a terrible person who davens in a terrible way, so to speak. He says, Hashem, if you answer me, then I know you're true. If not, then you're just like avodah zarah. And yet, Hashem answers him. Yosef HaTzadik is davening, no answer. What is going on? In the Nitzotzot, by Rav Yitzchak Hershkovitz, he quotes the Gemara in Masechta Berachot. The Gemara says, if a person sees he's having troubles, he's having different problems, he should look to see which Avirah he did, and make shuvah for that. If he looks and he finds no Avirah, then what should he think his Avirah is? Bitul Torah. No, I don't want to, let's just leave it at that. There's a big explanation into that. One day we'll look into it. But he says in Bitul Torah, and if a person looks and he realizes, Bitul Torah I don't have either, then he should think is Yisurin Shel Ahava. That what Hashem is doing is pains of love. Exactly how this means, exactly how you take it, how you understand it. There's a lot of different parameters here. It's not tonight's goal. But that's what the Gemara says. That if troubles are coming your way, and you can't figure out why, maybe it's because Hashem loves you and He's giving you this in order for you to become a greater and closer person to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yosef HaTzadik, we have to understand, was to become the tzaddik who he was. He would set the tone that would make Klal Yisrael able to exist in Mitzrayim without being influenced. That's a huge undertaking. That's what Rav Yitzchak Hershkovitz says is the reason why Yosef wasn't answered. Hashem answers every prayer. But Yosef had to go down to Mitzrayim. And his prayer would be answered later. He'd become king. But we have to understand, everybody has his own mission. Certain things that happen to exactly that person. Hashem doesn't give us anything that we can't handle. If it's on our plate, then we should be able to eat it and say Birkat HaMazon afterwards. It means thank you Hashem for it. The idea here is that yes, prayer helps, and prayer and bitachon definitely helps. And when Yosef HaTzadik prayed and he saw his prayer wasn't being answered, he realized that his prayer for this specific thing is not being answered because you know why? Because there's something else that needs to happen. There's something else that needs to go on. Here in the Peninim al Torah, he brings a short story that is both cute and very meaningful. Dr. Albert Einstein, right? Dr. Einstein. He was traveling by train from Princeton, New Jersey, when the conductor came down the aisle and punching each passenger's ticket. You had to show the ticket, and he would punch it. When he came to Einstein's row, right, Dr. Einstein didn't have his ticket. And he's looking everywhere for his ticket. And the conductor sees him and says, "Oh, I know who you are. You're the famous Dr. Albert Einstein. It's okay. I'm sure a man like you bought a ticket. If you can't find the ticket, it's okay. You don't have to look for it. We trust that you bought it. You're a very upstanding, distinguished individual. It's okay. You don't have to look for it." So the conductor continued. He went through the whole train. And he comes back the other way. He sees Dr. Einstein still looking. Albert Einstein is still looking for his ticket. So he tells him, hello. I already told you don't have to look for it. I already know that you bought it. And Dr. Einstein says back to him, "Young man," he says to him, "I know who I am, and I know that you know that I bought the ticket. But I'm looking for my ticket because I don't know where I'm going. You know, my ticket had where I was going, and I already forgot where I'm going. That's why I'm still looking for my ticket." Pnei Maltera says, that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Do we know where we are going? Do we even care where we are going? Do we have goals, objectives, plans, missions? Do you understand that Hashem put us down on earth to get something done? Or we're just floating around, just hanging out. When Yosef HaTzadik did not receive that answer right away, he realized he's on a mission. And he realized there's something that he needs to get done. And he had full emunah that whatever happens to him is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do we know this? In the Parshat, what do we see? The Pasuk says that when Yosef HaTzadik is in the house of his master, right? He's now in Potiphar's house. What does it say? Vehi ish matzliach, vehi bebet adonav hamitzri. That he was an ish matzliach. He was being a successful person in his master's house. I don't know how you could consider yourself successful if you're now a slave, the Ketav Sofer says. How can it be? Yosef HaTzadik says, I'm an ish matzliach, ish matzliach. He's a slave. If he's an ish matzliach, he never would have been sold. So he says, no. That Yosef HaTzadik believed in Hashem completely, that if I'm here, this is where I'm supposed to be. And that's why he's an ish matzliach. Wherever he is, that's where I need to be. That makes me now an ish matzliach. You know, it says, the Midrash says, ish matzliach, he was a man who was dancing. Yosef was always dancing. He's in Mitzrayim as a slave. He's thrown into the dungeon. He's still dancing. How could he be dancing? Because he completely believes that where I am is where I'm supposed to be. I davened to my mother. I didn't get an answer. I'm being sold. So everything's going on. That must be what Hashem wants for me. Right? It says in the Midrash, Yosef, Yosef, since he served his master with emunah, he got out from jail. He came out free. What does the Midrash mean? This is Shir Hashir. Midrash Shir Hashir says this. How do you understand this? The Sif Tzaddik said, you know what this means? The Sfas Emes answers, you know what this means? Emunah, he served who be'emunah? Everyone thinks he means he served his master the right way. No. He served HaKadosh Baruch Hu the right way. Meaning, that wherever Hashem put him, he had emunah, that's where I'm supposed to be. And that's why he got out. And that's why he became king. That's what all the good things that happened to him in the end. And saving all of Klal Yisrael. Because Yosef HaTzadik didn't say, oh, why is it happening to me? Why is all this going on? But rather, he had emunah. He served the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the dungeon, in being alone, all alone, he served the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the idea of an ish matzliach. Everyone wants to be matzliach. Who doesn't want to have success? Success is not complaining about our jobs or about our life or about issues that we have. And Ish Matzliach is a person who realizes everything I have is exactly what Hashem wants me to have. It's exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm not saying you can't try to work to get a better job or try to get something else. But the idea is, just like you said, it says, Daven, please save me. I don't want to go down to Mitzrayim. He davened to Hashem. Hashem didn't answer. So he realized that's where I have to be. This is what I have to do. And he makes the best with that situation. It's interesting that the beginning of the Parsha starts off, Vayeishev Yaakov, right? Yaakov settled. The Midrash says, what does this be compared to? Vayeishev Yaakov, what is it compared to? The Midrash says it's like a person who's walking, and suddenly he's surrounded by a pack of dogs. So what does he do? He's afraid. What does he do? Someone's afraid of a pack of dogs. What does he do?
Freezes. Run away.
Jump on the tree.
Run away. Read that. Midrash says, so what did Yaakov do? So he sat down amongst the dogs. Vayeishev Yaakov. He just went through Esav. He just went through Shechem and Chamor. Right? All these issues. And what did Yaakov do? He sits down. You have all these issues, run away, do something else, go somewhere else. He says, no. How can he do that? How can Vayeishev Yaakov sit down with all the dogs all around him? Because he realizes that that's where I'm supposed to be. He realizes that if I'm supposed to be here, then Hashem will take care of me. Soon is coming Hanukkah, but I want to skip to Purim. When it comes to Purim, right, and Esther has to save the Jewish people. So how did she go by how did she go by saving the Jewish people? What was her grand plan? What did she do? What was her thing? What did she do? She made a party. Not once, not twice. Why is she making a party? So Chachamim tell us. She said, Hashem, you know how I'm going to win this? Not by fighting you, Hashem, and saying, why is this going on? But rather accepting it with a party. I'm going to make a party. I'm going to accept that Hashem is making this challenge to Klal Yisrael. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to make a party. And through the emunah in Hashem, that everything is, what he's doing is right, somehow we're going to be saved. This is what Chachamim tell us. That when you believe that Hashem sent you to this place, you're able to sit down amongst the dogs. You're able to make a party. You're able to understand that you belong there, and you're going to take full advantage of it. This is what it means to be in Ish Matzliach. All right, moving on to our second lesson in this week's parasha. It's also connected to the story of Yosef. And they first decided they want to kill Yosef, right? And then they decided, you know what? Let's not kill him. Rather, let's sell him, right? Yehuda's plan, let's sell him instead. Right after this whole story, the Torah tells us, that Yehuda went down from his brothers, right? He went down, he got married. Rashi says, what does it mean he went down? He went down from his greatness. He was the king. Everyone knew that he was going to be the king. They all looked up to him. And when the brothers came home and they saw how upset their father was, they said, you said to sell him. We listened to you. If you would have said to turn him back, we would have listened to you too. Because you didn't tell us to send us back, everyone got upset with him. So Yehuda lost his stature. So Yehuda went down. Now, we have to understand this explanation of Rashi. Yosef's brothers wanted to kill him, right? Yehuda saved Yosef. He's selling him instead. He made what's known as Hatzalah Purta, a partial salvation. And the truth is, maybe Yehuda was thinking, like the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah, Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. If you try to grab too much, you won't grab anything. Yehuda maybe said, listen, if I'm going to say that return him home, the boss are going to say, you became too soft, and they're going to kill him right there. So he says, I had to find the middle ground. Sometimes when you're dealing with opposing parties and opposing ideas, you have to find a compromise. So Yehuda says, I found a way to save Yosef, and they will still listen to me. Maybe that's Yehuda's idea. So Yehuda was a great tzaddik. He saved Yosef. And yet we're saying he went down. So the Chafetz Chaim says, from here we learn that Yehuda made a serious error. What was his error? His error was misunderstanding his influence on others, his influence on his brothers. He thought that if he said, I'm going to make them to return Yosef, they're not going to listen. Therefore, he said to sell them. But the truth is, if Yehuda would have said to return him, they would have listened to him, because he did have that influence over them. The Hafetz Chaim says that this is true nowadays with most people. He says, especially when it comes to Rabbanim, the rabbis think, if I'm going to say something to someone, they're not going to listen. So you know what? I'm not going to say it. He says, how do you know they're not going to listen? You don't realize how much influence you can have on them. He brings a story that happened in Russia. There was a Jew who was making counterfeit money in his cellar. Finally, the Tsar's secret police found him, and they arrested him, and they're going to take him to a prison in Siberia. And as he was being led away, he said, before I get taken away, I need to stop by the Rav. So the police left. They brought the Rav to him. And when the Rav came, he says to the Rav, he says, Rav, you should know, you are to blame for me now going to Siberia and being punished. So I said, what do you mean? He says, you knew very well that I was printing counterfeit money, and yet you never told me to stop. And because of that, it's all your fault. The Chafetz Chaim concluded.
He would never listen to
But how did the rabbi know that?
Doesn't matter.
You don't know the power of your influence. The thing is that what we do is, we, not only rabbis, but everyone, what we try to do is, we don't want to, we really don't want to get involved. We really don't want to get involved. So what we do is, we come up with this idea that we're very anavim, we're very humble, and we're not that, who's going to listen to me?
Be good with them.
Right. So we come out with that. But the truth is, maybe what you would have said would have, now you have to know if there's a chance for it to be listened to. If not, that's a whole different story. Right? There's no chance for you to listen to, then you don't have to say it. But if there's a chance, then you have to. He says you cannot turn a blind eye, because later they'll come to you in Shemayim and say, he sinned because you didn't say anything. The Hafetz Chaim preached what he practiced what he preached. In a small village near Radin, they did not have a mikvah. The mikvah fell into disuse. The mikvah became all requiring repairs. But the people in the city, the town nearby Radin, didn't want to use the money to fix the mikvah. When the Chafetz Chaim heard about it, he sent messages to them that they have to do it, they have to fix it. And they didn't do it. And time went by, and there was no kosher mikvah in this town. He said, what did the Chafetz Chaim do? In his old age, he's already in his 90s. He traveled to this town. And they gave him to speak. And he said, my friends, you know that I'm already an old man. And I don't know how many more years I have on earth. When I come to Shemayim, they're going to make a din v'cheshbon and everything. And they will say to me, Yisrael Meir, you knew there was a community close to Radin who did not have a functioning mikvah. What did you do about it? So I will say that I appealed to the community to repair the mikvah, but they refused. Therefore, my friends, I know I spoke to you a few times about this and you kept saying no. What I want now is proof that I talked to you guys to build it. So I'm passing around the paper that says that you are refusing, that you heard me speak, and you're refusing to build a mikvah. Please sign on this paper, and I'm going to take this with me to the next world to show it to Hashem that I'm not responsible for your mikvah not being kosher here. Obviously, his drasha had the intended effect, and everybody all of a sudden found money to build, to fix, and make sure the mikvah is kosher. Here, Rav Pam says, many people fail to realize the extent of influence they have over others. They think they don't have any power of persuasion. They think they don't know what to say. They think they're very humble. But the truth is, people have power of influence. You just have to know how to use it, when to use it, where to use it. If you think about it, going into Shabbat, right? Shabbat is already Erev Hanukkah. Sunday night's going to be the first night. What is Hanukkah? Hanukkah is a couple of Maccabees who decide they're going to fight. and they influenced everybody to join. A few people who changed the course of history. All you have to do is try. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps with the rest. Let's end off with one last idea on this week's parasha. The parasha says, now Yosef Tzaddik is in Mitzrayim, and his master had a wife, known as Eshet Potiphar, and she, based on astrology or based on whatever, thinks that she needs to be with Yosef. She's a married woman, and she's trying to be with Yosef, and she tries to seduce him day in, day out. She keeps dressing different dresses, different this, different that, tells him different things. And she tried to tempt Yosef for illicit relations. And what does Yosef answer her? Yosef HaTzadik says, what does he answer? No.
Belong to my master.
ואיך אעשה הרעה הגדולה הזאת, וחטאתי לאלוקים. It says, how can I perpetrate this evil, and I have sinned against God? Okay, simply, you can understand Elokim being the master, that he's saying, your husband trusts me with everything, how can I go against the trust? But Rabbeinu Yonah, in his Shari Avoda, he says something very interesting. Before we understand what he says, let's see if he's talking about Hashem. What is Yosef HaTzadik answer? She is saying, come sin with me, right? And Yosef is saying, I can't because of Hashem. Right? And that answer is like, it's on a different level. Someone obviously doesn't care about Hashem if they're coming and sitting with you. And Yosef HaTzadik saying, oh, I'm sorry, Hashem, and the way Midrash brings it, he says, Yitzchak was chosen as a carbon. If I make this sin, I'll be possible as a carbon. I wouldn't be able to be brought up. Maybe my Hashem will come and say, take your son, the only one, the special one, and I won't be it. So I can't do it. Like, she cares. She's trying to sin with him. So here, the Rabbeinu Yonah says as follows. HaPetach HaRishon Hu. You should know, the first step, when a person is serving Hashem, Sheyeda Ha'ish Ha'oved Erech Atzmo. He should know his own worth. V'yakir ma'alato ma'alat avotav gdulatam v'chashivotam v'chibatam etzel haborei yitbarach. He should recognize his own virtue and the virtue of his forefathers and how much Hashem loves them. V'yetzel mizeh, and what will come out from this, ki kasher yitaveh ta'ava v'ta'aleh b'libo ga'ava la'asot davar she'eno hagun. If all of a sudden now comes a feeling in him to do something wrong, Yivosh ma'atzmo ve'yivosh ma'avotav, he would now be ashamed for himself and ashamed from his forefathers. If a person realizes how great he is, he'll be ashamed to do that. Ve'yashiv l'nafsho ve'yomar adam gadol ve'hashuvi kamoni hayom sheyesh mikam ma'alot tovot ramov v'nitzaot v'shani ben gedolim b'malchei kedem. How can I do this? I'm so great, I come from such great lineage. My grandfather, great-grandfather, what they did to survive as Jews in communist Russia, a person thinks for a moment. How they kept kosher no matter what. How they did things in order to keep themselves as Jews, and now I'm ready to throw it all off. If a person, Hashem, doesn't realize his own greatness, if a person doesn't realize this, he doesn't realize that he comes from Jewish stock, that he is coming from royal blood, then it'll be very easy for him to sin. A person really has to recognize who he is first. Right? Rav Pam would always say, in Yiddish, the phrase is pasnisht. Pasnisht means it's not right for you. Someone like you shouldn't do such a thing. So it doesn't go to who you are. There's a famous tale that was said over by Rav Nachman in Breslev. There was a prince who lived with his father and his mother, the king and the queen, and he was given a fine education. And as he was turning to be a young man, he decided somehow he had an identity crisis, very similar to a lot of people today. He had an identity crisis, and he thought that he was a turkey. So he took off all his clothes, and he wouldn't eat from the table. He would eat underneath the table, peck and gobble, 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 and that's what he was doing. No, you can imagine the king and queen, how embarrassed they are. So they go and they look everywhere for someone to come and help them. And doctor and everyone comes and no one's able to help. Finally, after a long time, some man shows up and he says, I can help. But whatever I do, you can't ask any questions. You just know that in the end, I'm going to help him. So what does this man do? You know, it's a famous story. The man comes, takes off all his clothes as well, gets under the table and starts to also peck from the food underneath. So now, the first turkey sees this other man there. He says, what are you doing here? He says, then what are you doing here? So the prince says, I'm a turkey. He says, well, I'm also a turkey. And so they both start pecking underneath the table. No, day in, day out, a few days go by. And all of a sudden, this man puts on a shirt. So the boy sees this and says, what are you doing with the shirt? I thought you were a turkey. He says, yeah, I'm a turkey. Turkeys can wear shirts. He says, really? He says, yeah. So the boy puts on the shirt too. So now you have two shirted turkeys underneath the table, pecking away on the food. A few days later, he puts on a pair of pants. And again, the young boy says, pants? What are you doing with pants? I thought you were a turkey. He says, where does it say that you can't wear pants if you're a turkey? Turkey can also wear pants. So, you know, and he goes, first the pants, then this, then that, and then he gets him to sit at the table. He says, why can't turkeys sit? Why can't turkeys use forks? Why can't turkeys use spoons? And eventually, he was convinced to act like a person. But he continued to identify as a turkey. A turkey acting like a human. Baruch Hashem, we don't suffer from turkey complexes. But what about our own self-identity? Our self-perception? Do we recognize who we really are? Do we recognize the inherent qualities that we were given? Do we realize that we have a neshama that comes from the kisei HaKavod? Do we understand that? Do we know that? Do we visualize it as being practical? Or we also think that we're stam another person, we're another basar v'dam, we're another, flesh and blood. There's flesh and blood by the goyim, and there's flesh and blood by the Jews, and we're all just the same thing. We're all just the basar v'dam. Or, as a shalom, it can go even other way. If someone thinks, about Gaiva, that he's even greater than everybody else. That no one else is worth anything to him. Be'ez Hashem on Shabbos, we're going to deal with the Mishnayot, and we'll see how that works out. Bishvili Nivra Olam, what that actually means. The person can get carried away with that. For me, everything was created. The truth is, we have to understand who we are. We have to have this Rabbeinu Yonah with us at all times to realize that we have our forefathers, we have our close ancestors, our ancestors from past, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and everyone in between. And if we realize that we're carrying a legacy, and we realize that we are not just, in the world they want to make us a number, right? Everything is a number or identification or something like that, and you're just here and now. But if we realize that we really come with the neshama, that we're really Hashem's prince, we're really something, there's a mission for us, then we would never have this turkey complex, and we'd be able to withstand temptation. So to review the 3 lessons that we had this week. Number 1 was that prayer and bitachon helps. And that means to realize when your prayer is not answered, you have a mission. And since you have that mission, you go to it fully. You realize that you're successful because that's where Hashem put you, and that's where you will get the most out of your mission. The second lesson was the power of influence. Don't think we don't have the power to influence, but rather realize that we do have that power. And the third lesson was to realize who we really are and where we come from, and the royal blood that courses through our veins. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us a beautiful Shabbat, maybe Zochet to a beautiful Hanukkah, where you continue to go Michael Chayil, and B'ezrat Hashem, looking forward to next week. Shabbat Shalom Mikula.